we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Good evening, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. Excuse me. So I had a couple of emails I was going back through, because if you ask an email question and it's not something that is really pressing, sometimes I just forget to answer it because I'm looking for people that are asking questions that are really kind of rehab related. So there's a question that has been asked about 5,000 times that I've never answered. And the question is, why do I say but the way that I did on the video? And the reason is, before you go live, everything is muted, so we can't hear that. And Mark used to have to queue up what was coming next off of my video. So toward the end of the video, when I go, but, Mark would hit a button. So the reason that that is there, it wasn't that I just felt like saying something very, very odd. It's because when you watch it, instead of saying, but if you're here, and I do the but. So that was the reason behind that. A ton of people have asked me if there's a reason I said it that way. That is the reason. It was the cue mark for my bobbleheaded partner to hit the button that would cue the next part of the lead up. So for those of you who did not see my live feed today, I am under the weather. I threw up last night and a couple of times. So today I've spent most of the day in bed, but I got an alert that I've had on my phone for a long time telling me when gold broke $2,000 an ounce, because when it did, I was going to liquidate a lot of gold, not a lot, but over $1,000 worth of gold. And I didn't want to get 900 for it. I wanted to get the most, no, Wharton, it should have been asked. So I decided I was going to get out of bed and make the drive because it's a long distance. I could sell the gold in town, but the people in town are thieves, and they don't, they'll offer you like $10 less than spec. And the guy that I sell my gold to offers spec, which is insane because nobody does that. But he offers literally like 50 cents or something below spec. He ends up making $7 an ounce. But the reason that he's able to stay in business and prosper is because he is such an honest person and pays so much money that people drive from hundreds of miles literally to sell gold to him. And he does a lot of business. He moves a lot of gold. Sadly, his shop is in a historic building that used to be a train station, which is really cool. It's an awesome old building, but there's no place to park. It has a gas station next to it. There's just no place to park, so you have to park down around a corner, and it's quite a walk. And if you're going to be selling gold, that's the place to park. And the thief, there was a gentleman today that took that as an opportunity to wait for somebody to come back from selling gold and to brandish a Colt 1911A, which is a 45. And if you're at all into guns, it has a hole in the front of it that's just absolutely huge. And he took the gold that the money that I had just sold for the gold, which, believe it or not, as stupid as this sounds, was still in my hand. I was counting it. And so he pointed the gun at me and said, "I'd like to have all that money." And I said to him, "You know what? This is for dope. I know what you're going to do. How about I give you $200 and I don't even call the cops, right? You just get away scot-free, go buy your dope, and I'll go about my day." And he said, "No, I would like all of that money and your watch." And fortunately, I was not wearing this watch. If I was, I might still be there laying in the street, because I would not have given up this watch. It's one of those things. I've actually considered the possibility that that may happen someday, and I'm just not taking this watch off. It's the only watch that I wouldn't have handed over to him. And fortunately, I wasn't wearing it. I was, however, wearing a Bulova 18 karat gold watch that had a few diamonds on it. And I don't own any of these. You understand? This is just inventory. And because I have a thing for watches, I rotate the watches that I wear. But this was inventory, and it was a watch worth thousands of dollars. So between the robbery, which was about $1,430, and the watch, I lost about $3,030 today. And I was really, really upset afterwards. And in my head, which is so often the case, your dealer offers you 10% over spec. My goodness, doesn't happen in our country. You're not getting anything over over spec in this country. It doesn't happen. But I was really angry, and the really illogical part of my anger is I try to help people who are on drugs, right? So this shouldn't happen to me. And first of all, I robbed a lot of people in my life, a lot. I never pointed a gun in someone's face to rob them. That's not how I did it. I considered that kind of lowbrow, I guess. So that was never, my modus operandi. I considered myself a thief, not a robber. So with the exception of the banks, I was never going in and confronting somebody. I was always being very sneaky and stealing something. But I stole things that belonged to people so many times, countless times. So after reality kind of set in, I sat and I started thinking about how many times I caused that emotion. Somebody came walking outside and whatever I had stolen was gone. I climbed 3 balconies once to steal a bike that was worth $4,000 or $5,000. Very, very expensive mountain bike. And it was on the 3rd floor balcony of somebody's outside porch. And I climbed the balcony and I lowered the bike down to the ground and then climbed back down. And me and the gentleman who caught the bike as I handed it down to him went and got about $1,000 worth of dope for this $4,000 bike. And I didn't give a moment's thought to that guy opening his sliding glass door to go get his bike, to go riding, and the devastation that his bike was gone. Never gave it a second thought. That one jumped to mind today. Or the number of times that, I could do this for the rest of the time I'm here today. But the one that really jumps out at me, which didn't hurt somebody the same way, but I remember stealing a computer out of a computer store, and it was in a box. And the box actually, believe it or not, said 30 kilos on the side of it. This thing weighed 60 pounds. This was when computers were still a tower and a monitor and all of, you bought home computers. And I went into a computer store. It was a nationwide chain. But the guy that I sold all of my stolen stuff to, which was primarily meat at the time, said, "I need a computer, man. I don't need anything else. If you could get me a home computer and preferably a new one, I would pay you 65 cents on the dollar for that," which much like people spending 10% over spec, fences don't pay 65 cents on the dollar for anything. That's a really rare thing. So I was desperate. And I was desperate enough to walk into a store, pick this thing up, and walk out the front door with it, carrying 60 pounds worth of merchandise, and just walk out the door, knowing it was going to beep, knowing all that was going to happen. I did it without a getaway driver. So not only did I have to do this, I had to then walk about 50 yards of parking lot with this thing in my hand, knowing that chances are there was going to be somebody coming behind me. And I was thinking of the desperation that took. I remember feeling so desperate for drugs that I had to go into this store and do this. And I remember thinking to myself on the way in the door, I give myself about a 50-50 chance of getting away with this. Like, I remember thinking, honestly, I got to put it in a car. I got to drive away. They could see license plates. There's cameras. I give myself 50-50. And with the realization that there was a 50% chance that I was going to go to jail for what I was about to do, I did it anyway. And when I drove out of the parking lot, I got to the bottom of the hill. It was this is like a strip mall kind of a thing. And as I came around and I got down to the bottom, there was a car wreck at the bottom of that hill, and I could not go around anything. So I put it in reverse to back up, and there was somebody behind me. And I thought, I'm going to be parked here until the police get here. And I remember looking to my right, and this huge box was on the seat next to me. And it was not something you're going to throw under the seat. It was not something I could have even lifted to get into the back seat from a seated position. So I put the seat back as far as I could, and I threw a jacket on it, which made it probably look even more ridiculous. But the guy in front of me finally got pissed enough to drive up on the curb and go around this thing. And I followed suit and did the same thing in a car that had no right going over a curb, and I ground out and everything else. But I remember the desperation that took. And the gentleman that robbed me today was challenged through the teeth area. He's been doing drugs for a really long time. I would say that, and again, it could have been anything, but I'm guessing that meth has definitely been a part of his life at some point. And that's pretty prevalent in this part of the country. It's a big meth part of the world, or was prior to the fentanyl epidemic. I don't know. His name was Mark, and I don't know what Mark's. And I know that, by the way, if you're just catching this for the first time, across the street from the place that I was robbed, the parking lot, was a Jiffy or Spiffy or something Mart, Quick Mart, Fast Mart, Jiffy Mart, Spiffy Mart, something like that. And they had a camera, and we went in there, and the cop asked the guy to run the camera back. And as soon as the video came up, and we were at a pretty good distance away from the camera, but the guy said, "Oh, that's Mark." I said, "You know who it is?" He said, "Yeah, absolutely, I know who it is." He said, "Mark is all of the police in this city know who Mark is." Mark has stepped up his game. Apparently, he said to me, he's never been a gun guy. He's never been a guy that robbed people with guns. He's the kind of guy that does petty stuff, Today, he entered a whole new realm of armed robbery. The desperation in this cat to elevate what he was doing to armed robbery had to have been massive. And I find myself a lot less pissed off at Mark than I was when this happened. I'm really unhappy that I'm out $3,000, and this is the economy's not great, so this $3,000 will be felt. But the point is, I know the desperation that it took for him to think to himself, a lot of people sell gold there, so I'm just going to post up and I'm going to rob the next person that comes out of that place after selling gold. And truth be told, he didn't do very well. He may think he did, but there are guys, literally, as I was going out of the place, there was a guy carrying in 2 15-gallon buckets full of coins. That guy had to have left with $100,000. Now, I would assume that the vast majority of that would have been in a check, but you never know. If he asked for cash, the gentleman that owns the store would have got it, because that's the kind of establishment it is. Someone selling $1,400 worth of gold, that's not a big gold sale. But He went from a guy that probably gets a 1 to 3. This is an unusual state in that you get 2 sentences. It's one of the only places in America that does that. You get a bottom number and a top number. So when you get sentenced, you really don't know how much time you're going to do. When they say you get a 1 to 3, you could be out in 12 months, or you could do a full 3 years. It just depends on what happens after you get into prison. If you act like a good boy, but he just got a 10 to 25. At a bare minimum, he's going to have to bring him 10 years in prison. There's no chance in hell he does less than that. And I don't take any joy in that at all. I really don't. The second it happened, I wanted him to get the electric chair. That was kind of where I was at the moment. But to be really, really honest, there, but for the grace of God, that could be me in that parking lot. You know, Mark just didn't get the break that he needed the last time he was in prison. If he had found the right person, or if he had gone to the right group, or if he had heard the right thing, he'd be working someplace and he'd be cashing a paycheck, and maybe he'd be trying to work on his appearance. But instead, he has the desperation of addiction, and that desperation of addiction affects every single one of us. Truthfully, there are people on the lifeboat who still are desperate. They may not be going through what he's going through. I found out recently that through the twins that they were paying $1 a pill for that Fent. $1 a pill. They've got it so cheap now that people who would normally hit rock bottom at 3 months can probably keep it going for a couple of years. I mean, providing that they don't get that pill that kills them. They said that if they bought, if they were to spend more money, they get a break. So for spending $10, you get more than 10 pills. And this is just absolutely astounding to me. But that desperation is something that all of us have felt at one time or another. We've all been there. And believe it or not, and I'm not a good person, and I'm not trying to tell you that I'm a good person, because I'm not, but I'm working on it. I really am. And there's a part of me that is going to be praying for Mark, that something really fantastic happens. I would like for him to take that watch to a pawn shop so that I can get the watch back. That would be lovely. And the police in this state are really good about that. If that watch ends up at a pawn shop, I'll end up with it, getting it back, which would be lovely. The money's gone. I mean, the money, and there's a real good chance that the watch is on the wrist of a dope dealer right now, but that's gone. That's a write-off. But the truth of the matter is, if I could have got the guy sober, I probably would have been willing to give up the money. You know, a person's life is worth so much more than $1,430 and a really nice watch. And it's so easy to forget where you've been. You know, the number of emails I get every month that say, you don't have to keep telling people that you have been convicted of this or you've been convicted of that. You know how easy it is to forget that that's the person that you were? Because when this guy robbed me, I became John Q. citizen really quickly. I called 911, right? The police showed up, and I asked all the questions that a person who's never broken the law ask. You know, what are the odds of you finding this guy? What do you think the odds are you get to him before he spends all of this money? I know the answer to those questions. I mean, for real. He probably bought $600 worth of dope. He probably bought $50 to $100 worth of booze and a couple of cartons of smokes. And now he's holed up someplace. He's still got about $400 or $500 in his pocket. And for the next 6 or 7 days, he's not going to worry about much. He's not going to wake up needing a fix, because he's going to have one sitting right there. And he's wanted right now for a burglary that has nothing to do with me. The police were kind enough to tell me that he's already wanted. The odds that this guy gets out of this city are not very good. If Mark had anything on the ball, he'd be at a bus station right now. But that's not how it works. The thing about dope is it makes you forget the stupid stuff that you just did. And it makes you believe that you got away with things. If that guy was sitting in that parking lot for even 5 minutes, he had to realize that there was a camera across the street. If that camera didn't get him, they were going to another place because there was actually 2 cameras that this guy was looking at. Thank you, Ilea. I appreciate that. You know what? It's probably better that it happened to me than somebody else, because now at least I am past the, boy, I wish that guy was dead phase, because I think it's human nature. But the crazy thing is, this is the kind of person that I'm trying to help, so getting really angry. I would imagine that because of the fact that he's on film, because of the fact that he's already wanted for something else, Mark's going to spend about 25 years in prison. And at first I was gung-ho to go and testify against him. And now that feeling doesn't feel so good. He probably needs to be incarcerated. 25 years is probably not something he needs, honestly. And for all I know, the gun wasn't loaded. That's the kind of thing that people do. I wasn't about to grab it and find out. That thought never crossed my mind. He was not a very big person. I was talking to someone right after the fact that said, how big was he? I said 5'6", 5'7", and they said, I'm almost surprised you didn't go for the gun. And maybe it's because sobriety is kicked in, but that didn't even cross my mind. Not at any point did I think, you know what, maybe I should go after this guy. Because I'm to the point now where I really do love life. There was a time in my life where desperation because of drugs would make me do things that defied logic. They would make me do things that made absolutely no sense. I've told the story on here before. I stole a concrete saw from a construction lot at a 4-way intersection. Every road going into this intersection was 3 lanes wide. I stole this thing in front of probably 600 witnesses, people in cars. And the guy that I stole it from was from me to the camera away from me. But he was wearing a big thing of headphones, and he was pushing this device that's the biggest concrete saw you've ever seen. It's the size of an automobile. I'm not exaggerating. It's absolutely massive. I don't know how big the blade is, but this thing is as big as a car, and you hold the handle and you walk behind it. And then the small concrete saw, which my fence had told me I need a concrete saw, was right next to him. I had just driven away from the fence. I'm cursing the whole way up the hill. I'm going to find a concrete saw. Where the hell are you going to find a concrete saw? And I got to the top of the hill, and there was a concrete saw. So I pulled around, and I went to a parking lot, and I jumped to the fence like an Olympian, right? There was a split rail fence. I jumped the fence, and then I started walking like I was going up the side of the sidewalk. And then I just walked out into the construction zone right behind this guy and picked this thing up and turned around and ran as fast as I could. And I tried jumping the fence with this huge concrete saw in my hand, which didn't work out well. And I remember falling and thinking, they got to be right behind me. And I jumped to my feet and I ran and I threw this thing into a van that the getaway driver happened to be driving at the time, a Ford Astro van. And I pulled the sliding door open and I threw the thing in and I dove in, right? Instead of shutting it and getting in, I drove in behind it and I pulled it shut and I said, are they coming? Are they coming? And he said, no one's coming anywhere. Like, it doesn't even look like they know. But he said people were leaning on the horn. Only an idiot would do that. But the whole ride home, I was gritting my teeth, angry, when the logical thing to say would have been, who in their right mind robbed somebody at gunpoint at 1:30 in the afternoon? I do not know that name. Thank you so much. I wish I could pronounce that to thank you. My eyes are really bad, and I have never seen that name before. And only an idiot would be the getaway driver. I was not going to incriminate my brother, but my brother was driving that Ford Astro van. No one in their right mind does the things that addicts do. And Mark's not in his right mind. And I'll be really honest. Right now, I'm glad that Mark's going to get a couple of days of feeling good. I hope he doesn't overdose because his days are coming to an end. He's going to get caught. And the sad thing is that more and more, there are people who can't face that. And if this guy's carrying a gun, I hope he doesn't take himself out as opposed to facing the proposition of kicking in jail. I remember had to be about 15 or 20 years ago. But I knew a guy named Paul, and Paul stole Levi's. And he was actually way smarter than most of us. I never understood the idea. But he would steal 501 Blues, brand new Levi's. That was the only thing he would take. And I used to think to myself, the hell is he doing with Levi's? Like how much money could you possibly make on Levi's? And then while in prison, I read the book Wonderland and found out that the biggest status symbol in the world for these guys who are going back to Mexico are Levi's. When they go back to Navarrete, the town that they're from, if you see a guy wearing a pair of 501 Blues, chances are he's a drug dealer because they're just not available down there. And if they are, they're a 6-month salary. But he would go and trade the dope man. He'd bring 3 pair of Levi 501 Blues, and the guy would give him, $150 worth of dope. He wouldn't have to sell it. He would go straight to the dealer with it. And I remember the morning like it was yesterday. I was at a guy's house, and we were waiting for a drug guy, and the drug guy had just showed up, and I had bought $100 worth of heroin. And Paul said to me, "Man, is there any chance you could give me one of those bags?" And I said, "You know what, man?" I, of course, was lying, but I said, "This isn't mine. I'm picking this stuff up for somebody else, and I'm just getting a bag for doing it." And he's like, "You could retie them, just take a little bit off each one." And the look of desperation on the cat's face, I said, "Yeah, man." I'm like, I'll do that, but it won't be a full bag because So I gave him about 3/4 of a bag of heroin, and he shot it. And he said, "I'm going to J.C. Penney's to steal Levi's." He goes, "And I just don't want to go in there sick." Here you go, Paul. And before he left, I said to him, "You steal Levi's?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "And you know what, man?" He said, "J.C. Penney's is the closest store." He said, "I've hit this store for Levi's 150 times. He said, "The last 2 or 3 times I've been in there, they've been all over me." And I said, "Man, you got to find a different place." And he said, "There's no place close enough." So 2 days went by, and I was reading the police blotter, which I used to do on my phone to see if anybody I knew got arrested. And they had a story of a guy who hung himself in Parr Boulevard, which is the local jail around here. And it was Paul. He got caught stealing those jeans, and he took a sheet and tied a knot around it. And when it came time for the doors to close at night, he locked the sheet in the door, and then he hung himself from it. He just couldn't face kicking in a county jail again. The desperation that sends you into a place that is looking for you to go steal again is the desperation that could make somebody hang themselves because they can't face 7 days of being sick. It's a vicious disease that we suffer from. It really is. The bank robberies make for a great story, right? Because that's bank robbery. But the desperation wasn't the bank robberies. By then I was just a committed drug addict, and the part of my brain that dealt with all of that was so badly drugged that I didn't spend a whole lot of time concentrating on any of that crap. But there were times that I went into stores and ran out the front door carrying 100 pounds of filet mignon. That was desperation. And the fear that this is going to be the one they get you on. This is going to be the one they get you on. I would do that 365 days in a row. Every single time I got up, I had to go do what this cat did. I didn't do it the same way. But when the sun rose and my eyes opened, that desperation started. I had to come up with that money so that I could get dope, so that I could feel normal. So as much as I'm pretty bummed out that I lost this, because this is not good timing, I feel worse for the guy that stole it. And I'm not saying that to be a good guy or anything else. I'm just keeping it real. Since I got home, something about traffic, I was just gritting my teeth the entire way home. And I got a call from Alan Ballantyne right before I got home. And you could say a prayer for Alan. Alan is having some health trouble, so he's pretty sick. If I could get some ones for him. That would be great. But after I got home and got out of the clothes I was wearing, and I went over to pick up a watch out of my watch box. I have a lot of watches here, but there's about 12 of them that I wear, that I keep in a rotation. And in that box was my dad's watch. And you know what? I didn't have my dad's watch on today. And that is just an absolute miracle. I wear this watch a lot, but I wasn't wearing it today. So I've got a great deal to be thankful for. Mark doesn't. Mark needs the lifeboat more than anybody I've met in a real long time. That cat needs the lifeboat. And sadly, he's not going to find it. With any luck, they have a program up here that they call WINGS, Willing Inmates Nationally Gaining Sobriety. It's an acronym. And I've been through that program. I'm hoping that when Paul goes to prison, he gets into the WINGS program. I hope that he gets through that phase of getting sick, and that he manages to get out of the other side of that. But he didn't do this because he's trying to drive a nice car. In movies, the guys that rob people with guns, you see them in the next scene, and they're surrounded by money in some beautiful place they rent in the Hollywood Hills. It just never happens like that. That's BS. The people who are out stealing are doing it out of desperation. You've seen Point Break, right? The movie with Keanu Reeves, where everybody jumps out of airplanes and they go surfing and all of that. It's based on a group of bank robbers that were called the Stopwatch Gang, because the only part of that movie that was real is that they used to put on masks of presidents, and that one guy would carry a stopwatch, and they would all go in together, and that one guy would be yelling out the time, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and they would go behind the counter and they would hit all of the drawers, and they would steal a lot of money. That was real, but the rest of it was all BS. I met one of the stopwatch guys who's still alive. Many of them are not, but one of them who is still alive is in federal prison, and I met him, and he never went surfing. He's never jumped out of an airplane, and he certainly wasn't touring the world with the money that he stole. He was going back to dingy motel rooms and holing up until he ran out of the money by doing dope. And then he would go do it again. And that was what these guys did. Hollywood has a way of glamorizing things. But the truth is, the people who do the kind of things that Mark did today, or the people that go into banks, and nobody's doing that stuff to drive Ferraris, and nobody's doing that because this is just how they make a living. People do that out of desperation, and the desperation of addiction is the saddest thing in the entire world. Thanks, Zenwen. I appreciate you, hon. I really do. So maybe, just maybe, when we see the pictures of the people in San Francisco who are living in tents on the side of the road and defecating in the streets, it's enough to make you sick. It really is. And I take very serious problems with it, because I think that in many cases, the government is intentionally making it worse. I know that sounds so stupid, but I believe it. There's just too much evidence against the fact that it is happenstance. A couple of different people on the lifeboat that I'm close friends with sent me a video on Portland, Oregon. And it's a beautifully made piece. Maybe I will link it over in the Facebook group page. It's a really well done. But they talk about the drug problem in Portland and the laws that were changed and how that exacerbated the problems in Portland. One of the things that absolutely blew me away is they showed a tent city, and the guy said, Multnomah County comes out and erects tents that are empty. Follow me? They go and they put 4 or 5 empty tents out underneath a bridge, or, on the side of a road, or behind a business or whatever. But they go and erect 3 or 4 empty tents in hopes that homeless people will move into them. Then that expands. As they meet other people, they say, you know what? The police never harass us over here. Bring your tent. And these tent cities get bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon they're, MRSA and all of the other things that happen to people who use needles outside, the devastation. The government is putting those tents up for people. And maybe in their head, they think they're doing the right thing. Seventh son, thank you, my friend. Maybe they think they're doing the right thing. I don't know. Maybe they do. But this is the same city that, as they were burning it to the ground, the mayor came out to thank the people who were burning it shortly before getting tear gassed. I was still in prison when that happened. I actually watched that. Part of the riots that happened after that man who would have overdosed on fentanyl had they left him alone, but instead they put a knee on his neck and made it happen a lot quicker. When those riots all happened, I call them the BLM riots. You can call them whatever you want. But when those were going on, the people of Portland thanked the rioters. Make a lot of sense to you? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. But all of these laws that are meant to help these people are making it worse. You see that when they decriminalized everything in Portland, Oregon, and I'm all for decriminalization. I'm all for it. I'm all for legalization. The trouble with decriminalizing versus legalization is that you make it so that nobody gets in trouble for getting caught with drugs. When someone gets in trouble for being caught with drugs, they turn in the drug dealer. Follow me? They say, you're looking at 5 years in prison, or you're going to tell us where you got this dope. What do you think happens in a city where they say, okay, here's your ticket, you can leave? Think the drug dealers are too worried about things? So many drug dealers have showed up that pills are now $1 a piece. Fentanyl pills are $1 a piece. Many of them, according to the federal government, more than 6 out of 10 of them have more than 2 milligrams of fentanyl in them. 2 milligrams of fentanyl would kill me. 2 milligrams of fentanyl would kill Keith Richards. 6 out of the 10 of these pills have it. So these people crush them. They don't do a whole pill. It's just an easy way to buy it. It then becomes powder that they shoot, snort, smoke, whatever. But the best intentions have caused a much worse problem. Crazy, but those best intentions are caused by desperation. They're watching the world unravel, just like everybody in this country is. 400 people a day dying, it's unraveling. And desperation is making people do really stupid things. Well, we need to stop arresting so many people and putting them in prison. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just let the dope dealers go wild. We'll let the dope dealers go wild. And the vast majority of these people now are stealing cars. That's how there was this big chop shop operation going on in Portland. And for that reason, they started to lessen the penalties for stealing cars. Best of intentions, done out of desperation. Can't afford to put this many people. I mean, if we incarcerate all of them, we're going to have to build 4 more prisons just for the people that are stealing cars. Truth be told, if they said the next person we catch stealing a car is doing 25 to life, they're going to find a new way to make money. It's only going to take about 3 of those people getting 25 to life before people start going, whoa, I'm not stealing any cars. Instead, they made it a growth industry. You get caught stealing a car on a Friday, you will be out on Monday. There are people who had 6 and 7 of these arrests over the course of a 6-month period of time because they got nothing to lose and a whole lot to gain. They steal one of these cars, they bring it to that chop operation, and they're handed $2,100 bills. Desperation in this drug game does so much more than put a gun in Mark's hand. Desperation in this drug business puts a pen into the hands of legislatures that have no right having a pen in their hand. I feel safer with Mark having a gun in his hand than I do with these jackwagons on the hill with a pen in their hand. There's no half measures. They don't work. If you're going to fight this, and I don't think you can win. I don't think there's any point in fighting it anymore. But the other option is to say, we're just going to make this so that you can buy it. Now, if we make it so that you can buy it legally, and we catch you shooting up in the street, you're going to get a 5-year sentence. That kind of logic makes sense. Okay, you have the opportunity to buy this. No more drug dealers, no more cartels. You're buying this thing at a state-run facility. You have nowhere to go. There's a place in the back that you can inject your dope and then leave. I know that people hate the idea of clean injection sites. Do you know that no one has ever died at a clean injection site anywhere in the world? There's never been an overdose that was not saved at a safe injection site. This doesn't make people want to shoot dope. It doesn't. If people think that, then they just don't get it. They don't get it. You don't wake up one day and go, I want to try intravenous drugs. I'll bet they're a hoot. The way everybody, and there's nobody I've ever met that doesn't tell the same story. My habit got up to $200 a day and I couldn't afford it. And you meet tons of people who are in the same game, right? As you're going to pick up dope, 15 other people are picking up dope. So you all go back to the same hotel room and you fix or you do whatever. A guy says, yeah, you can come in my house. Don't worry about it. You get in there and a guy pulls out one bag and he cooks it and sticks it in his arm and his eyes roll back and he goes, oh my God. And you're smoking your 9th bag going, huh? How many of those do you do a day? 2. Well, I do 9 at a sitting and I do it 5 times a day. What are you going to do? That's how people end up on needles. Not because they think, ooh, there's a needle exchange program. I think I'll just try shooting it. Desperation in the drug game causes people to do stupid things. Whether you're a legislator, whether you're a police officer. How many videos have you seen on YouTube of cops planting dope on people? See those stupid things that they wear? They catch themselves because they know that the guy that they're pulling over, he does dope. So they figure may as well get him off the street. That mindset is insanity. That's people doing desperate things in the hopes of making a difference. Those people aren't planting dope because they're malicious pieces of crap, although make no mistake, they're pieces of crap. But they plant that dope in hopes of getting somebody off the street and maybe making a difference. You understand how this spirals? Can you see how all of this becomes desperate at every single level? Chase it all the way to the top. And you got a president sitting in the White House going, good God, right? This fentanyl stuff is out of control, man. It's making my presidency look bad. Let's throw $30 billion at it. What's the plan? I don't know. I don't have one. But $30 billion has got to make a difference, right? I mean, that's a lot of money. Let's throw $30 billion at it. You realize that that money is sitting there waiting for people to come and get it. And there are people who are getting smart. There are people who are figuring out how to go and get that money. And the fraud will be insane. You take that $30 billion, I'll bet you 5 of it, maybe more, just get stolen right off of the top. Fake organizations, fake paperwork. We helped this many people. We started a harm reduction program. Seriously, if you start a harm reduction program, you think that there's somebody from the United States of America counting how many people walk through the door? The theft that's going to take place on that $30 billion is staggering. They don't even know where it goes. It's not allocated to anything. It's allocated to fight fentanyl. So if you're going to go around and go to schools and get money to talk to kids, yep, that falls under there. If you're going to put up a harm reduction center where you're going to have people inject in a safe injection site, yeah, there are cities that are going to allow that, and that money will come from there. If you're handing out needles, that's going to come from that $30 billion. You can't throw money at problems. You know the proof of that? Mark is the proof of that. Mark's a guy with a serious problem, and he just got $3,000. Think he's going to be fine? Think that $3,000 is going to get Mark on his feet? He'll have a job on Friday, start getting his life together. $3,000. I mean, if you're living on the street, $3,000 has got to be winning the lottery. He'll be out of that money in 3 or 4 days. And then the desperation will kick in. And this is the same thing at every single phase of this. Whether you're a guy on the street trying to get well, or whether you're a government official who is worried for his career, or a legit, I really give a crap government official who's afraid for the kids in their district, right? That their constituents are really seeing their kids die. But all of this causes desperation. What needs to happen is that clear heads need to prevail. Logic needs to come in. I've said this before on the channel, and I will stand by it. We didn't just destroy America. We destroyed Mexico. And we didn't do a whole lot of good to South America either. The problem is that when you create a demand in a country with as much money as America has, someone has to supply it. And they will do anything to control that supply. They'll skin people alive, right? They'll cut off their genitalia and shove it down their throat. The stories of what these cartels are doing to one another is harrowing. It makes horror films, look like Sesame Street. We caused that. This country caused that. If we weren't buying that much dope, then there wouldn't be the need for 5 cartels to be fighting each other to get that kind of money. But when you're talking about freight cars full of $100 bills, people will do some really crazy stuff for that kind of money. I hope I'm making sense and I'm not just sounding like I'm on a rant. But we really are in a place where desperation is causing us to do dumb things. And it is not, as much as this may be a stretch for some people to understand, it is not much different than Mark grabbing that gun and waiting on me. This epidemic is causing desperation at every single phase of it. To the person looking for a dime bag, to the person selling the dope and trying to get it across the border to bring it here, to the cartels who are killing one another to control it, to the people manufacturing stuff in South America. And everything that we do is a knee-jerk reaction. And the knee-jerk reaction never helps. It just doesn't. They had this big thing in South America that said, if you're willing to give up your coca, because that's how all of these poor people make their money. They grow coca plants. They turn it into paste, which they call busca. It's cocaine base. You couldn't sell it in the US. It looks like mashed potatoes. You could smoke it, but you can't sell it. It has to be refined from that base product into the stuff that people snort. And these guys sell it in huge, huge amounts for $20. But $20 down there is a lot of money. So the government came in and said, we have an incentive. If you quit growing coca, we will help you grow a new crop. We will give you machines to help you grow it with. We will show you the crops, what the rotations are. And they got these people to give up their coca plants. Trouble is, they never showed back up, and they didn't help these people. So now you got an entire country full of people who are starving because the money that they were making selling this stuff, they're not getting paid anymore. So all of them said, screw you. And they planted 4 and 5 times the normal amount that they normally would have grown, because now they got to make up for the fact that they can't feed their families. You know what happens when tens of thousands of people grow 4 times more coca than they need to? There's more coca than can be produced. So there's busca down there, tons of it that no one wants to buy. Or if they buy it, they're buying it for pennies because there's just more of it than people need. This creates problems. Now people are killing each other because if they can kill their neighbor, well, that's one less person to try to sell. And if they can kill that other guy, well, then they might just be able to start selling their stuff. These are problems we create. We, the federal government of the United States of America, has created with drug prohibition. We didn't just destroy our country. We destroyed tons of countries. And our enemies, well, finally, there's an enemy smart enough to go, who needs guns? Who needs guns? These idiots will kill themselves, and they'll pay us for the right to kill themselves. I saw a scary article yesterday that says We don't have anybody to replace the soldiers that we have now. And we've been at war for 20 years. So our soldiers, they're tight. They're well-trained. They're in great shape. They are soldiers. These are people ready to fight. God forbid we go to war, there's nobody to replace them. They have dropped the standards to where now you have to be able to do 24 push-ups. 24 push-ups. People, you got to be kidding. I'm an old man. I haven't been working out in forever, and I could drop right now, and I could do 10 sets of 25. 24 push-ups is all you have to do to be able to pass. You should see the other stuff. You've got to be able to run a mile in 16 minutes. You can walk a mile in 16 minutes. Trust me, Alan Valentine does it every single morning. Walks 5 or 6 of them at that pace. You see what's happening? They're unraveling our country. Their weapon of choice is drugs. And it's creating problems from the very top to the very bottom. Today, I got wrapped up in the very bottom. The desperation of this drug game cost me $3,000. It's not the end of the world. It's gonna make for a pretty rugged month. I need a miracle or two. And I'll get it. I'll get it. But I feel horrendous for the guy that robbed me. I'm not going to take any joy in the fact that this guy's going to be in prison for 25 years. It does nothing to make this world a better place. It just doesn't. Especially considering that 3 to 6 months of this guy meeting with the right person, and he could be a citizen that pays taxes. It doesn't take rocket science. It takes a miracle. It really does. But those miracles are a better bet than $34,000 a year to incarcerate him for 25 years. Give me that money. Give me that money. What's that come to? Over $500,000? Give me Mark and $500,000, and I assure you, I will get that cat on his feet. I will get his teeth fixed. He will not be on dope. And that man will live a productive life. Instead, we would rather incarcerate him and blow $500,000 that we don't have to take a man that doesn't have anything but a disease. It's a pretty messed up system. It really is. It's a messed up system. And I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be able to leave and walk around and go to other states and talk and do things. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for as long as the time that I've got left on this planet. I'm going to be screaming about this because it's a bad system and it needs to be broken. It needs to be disassembled and then it needs to be put back together. We spend more money on this than we spend on anything other than the military, and we are not getting any victories. Not a one. Not a one. I didn't have time, and I probably would not have been privy anyway to ask them how many times Mark has been incarcerated. But if I had to take a guess, I'd say 5. I would say 5. The reason I say that is they mentioned ACC, which stands for Armed Career Criminal. ACC, if they don't always convict on ACC, they threaten you with it so that you will take a deal for 25 years. Because if Mark decides to take this to the box, as criminals say, and go all the way to trial, and they convict him for robbing me and whoever he did before me, and then they hit him with the Armed Career Criminal enhancement, he's going to spend every day of the rest of his time on this planet in prison because they're going to give him 50 years because he's a drug addict. They're going to give him 50 years because he can't feel normal without drugs. It's depressing, isn't it? It really is. It's depressing. And I'm still sick as hell. I don't feel good, people. I really don't. I'm hoping that I'm going to feel better by tomorrow. But I'm not angry at Mark anymore. I'm really not. I'm a little pissed off at the guy that's going to end up with my watch. 18 karat gold Bulbas are just, they don't make very many of them. I mean, there's a handful of them. It's a sad watch to lose. And it happens to be a watch. My business model is there's a thing called APB. I try to spend the smallest amount of money, and it's like, duh. No, but I mean, with watches, because so many of the people who are selling them don't know what they're worth. Sometimes you can buy watches that are worth $10,000 and pay $700 for it. But the 18 karat Bulova, I paid a lot of money for it because it's a very rare watch, and the guy that had it knew it was a rare watch, and it just sucked. But you know what? It's a watch. It's not a life. You know, it's not a rape. It's a watch. And on the bright side, I have a lot of other ones that are for sale. I will feel this. It will cost me, but it's not going to cost me even close to what it's going to cost Mark. And I take zero joy. And if you had talked to me an hour ago, I wanted him to do life in prison, but he's just me. Really. Got a few less breaks, you know, probably a family that was not nearly as good as mine. You know, he got dealt a bad hand, and he allowed that to take him to some really dark places, dark enough to take a Colt 1911A and point it at a stranger. For all he knew, I was carrying a gun. You know the desperation that takes? That cat doesn't know that I don't go like this, right? I'm coming out of a gold place. If I was legal to carry, I would have had a gun. The desperation that man had to feel to point a gun at a guy that very likely could be carrying is absolutely astounding. And I remember that desperation. I really do. And for that, I take no joy at all in what just happened to this guy. I think that we as a group of people who are enlightened, and make no mistake, if you're listening to me right now, you are enlightened. You didn't find the lifeboat for any other reason. For those of us who are enlightened, I think we have to look at people who are trapped in this game with a little bit more empathy. Doesn't mean you got to give him a pass. He doesn't deserve a pass. I mean, that's dangerous. He's carrying a friggin' gun. But he doesn't deserve 25 years to life. It's just, he doesn't. And I don't think that I could be very happy testifying against this guy. I really don't. I don't think I'm going to have to either. He's on film, but I would take no joy in sitting in a suit that made me look like I was nothing like him, you know, and helping to pass judgment. You know, I'd kind of like to go in and show off my tats and say, you know what, I've been there. Maybe you ought to cut this guy some slack. You know, you don't know what he might be. Maybe in 3 or 4 years, he's running a sobriety channel and trying to help people get clean. Or maybe he's, you know, running a halfway house or walking around on the streets and just telling people they can get clean. You know how many people like him are now making a difference? I'd like to believe I am. And I also know that deep down, I was probably worse than this guy. The difference between me and him is probably the fact that I'm a little bit more creative. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but just from looking at him and him looking at me, I would say I probably have a little bit more on the ball than he did. And I took a lot more time to consider the crimes that I was getting ready to commit. But you know what? There's not much difference between me and Mark. Sad truth. I mean, today, there may be a pretty big difference between me and Mark. But in my heyday, the difference between me and Mark, you know. So I'm alive. I didn't lose my dad's watch. I lost a Bulova. So things will continue to push on, you know. And maybe if you're feeling really altruistic, if you're feeling like you understand this whole addiction thing, maybe we could get some ones up there in the maybe we could get some ones up there And maybe some prayers for a guy named Mark from Carson City, Nevada, who's going to need a crap load of prayers. Because that man needs prayers. I would really like to think that he gets arrested before he gets shot. You know, sadly, when you run around with a gun, there's a real good chance you're going to come up against somebody with a gun. And he's somebody's son, and he's probably somebody's father and brother. And I don't take any joy in the thought of him getting snuffed. It would be one more victim of this drug game. And you know, people, when they talk about the 400 people a day who overdose and die on this stuff, if I had a gun today and I shot Mark for trying to rob me, he wouldn't have made the statistic for how many people died off of fentanyl today. That would not have made it into those numbers. Or the people in Chicago who are going to shoot each other today over who gets to sell fentanyl on what street corner. What do you think the numbers really are? You think 1,000 people a day? Do a little research and look at how many people get shot this week in Chicago. And let me tell you that those shootings are over drug turf. They're over who gets the right to sell fentanyl on what street corner. And as far as I'm concerned, that is another person who is a victim of this war on drugs. So let's say a prayer for all of those who are out there who should be here on the deck of the lifeboat, meeting people, trying to become better, right? This is a disease that maybe you can't cure it, but you sure as hell can treat it. And that cat doesn't need incarceration, he needs treatment. And I could go down there and tell the judge that at sentencing, and you know what they would do? They would say, thank you, and then they would give him 25 years. Knee-jerk reactions, desperation in the drug game. So I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and I will be back in the morning. I will be feeling better physically because I am just not feeling great today, peeps. Before I got robbed, I wasn't feeling great today. And this is a cat in a basket. Eh? You're a good-looking kitty. You want to bite me? No? Aw. That's so nice. She's a good girl most of the time. All right. Good night, everybody. We love you. See you tomorrow on the deck of the boat. Amen.